Chapter 6. My 18th birthday finally arrived, followed by my high school graduation. It was a surprisingly large turnout with all of my relatives coming out for a visit. Bradley seemed to care less about my graduation and more about my graduation cap, as he played with the tassel the entire car ride home that evening. There was a pleasant celebration at the house soon after, but my parents didn't seem too compelled to stick around. Both of them retired to their bedroom upstairs and didn't return for the rest of the night. A few days later, I began packing up all of my belongings. I was enrolled in a college up in the town of Lanston, and the new semester was going to begin in a few days. The city was 2 hours away from home, so I had to move into an apartment closer to the campus. Packing up my property brought an eerie silence over the house. Dad spoke little to me, though that was to be expected since he formed an annoying habit of ignoring me for the past several years. Mom was ecstatic to my moving away, but didn't feel obligated to help me pack, not that I needed her help anyway. More importantly, I was surprised that Bradley didn't jump at the first chance to help me pack. Instead, he locked himself in his room all day, refusing to say anything to me. I packed up every one of my personal possessions, paying special care to my framed picture of Bradley's drawing of the two of us from when he was 5. Having matured slightly, Bradley disliked the drawing now, ashamed of its poor craftsmanship. But I ignored any and all criticism given by anyone towards it. That picture meant more to me than anyone would ever know. It signified the beginning of the bond between Bradley and me, and I could never dream of parting with it. Finally, moving day arrived. I packed up my belongings and prepared to embark on my new journey. Dad remained silent, Mom couldn't wait for me to be gone, so she was practically shoving me out the door enthusiastically, and Bradley had his back turned, refusing to see me off. I finally realized what was bothering him. Bradley was devastated that I was leaving him, cursing life itself for taking his brother away. I comforted him and assured him I would come back and visit. Bradley turned to face me and asked me to make him a promise. I hugged him close and swore my return. My brother dropped his grudge in an instant, trusting my pledge and knowing that deep down he had no reason not to trust me. As I drove away slowly, I took one last look back at the cul-de-sac, and all the memories came crashing back into my thoughts. I remembered all the afternoons of street games, bike rides, and ice cream treats. It was bittersweet saying goodbye to the grand old neighborhood, but a new life awaited me just around the corner. Lanston was a quaint little town. It wasn't exactly the entertainment capital of the world, but there was still a thing or two to do for fun. It didn't take long to settle into my apartment. I was the only one occupying the place since it was so small. Consisting of a tiny living room, a kitchen that ensured only one person could cook a meal at a time, a bathroom, and a bedroom with just enough room for my furniture. I arranged it as best I could to resemble my room back home, so it would be easier to adjust to my new environment, though in a way it was kind of depressing walking out of my room in the morning and being greeted by the reality that I wasn't home anymore. In what I saw as a gesture of luck, I discovered that Monica had moved to Lanston as well to attend the same college as me, and she was only 20 minutes away from my complex. Things were pretty quiet for the most part at my first year of college. Classes weren't anything I couldn't handle, and I met up with Monica whenever I had little else to occupy my time. We began to see more of each other, and before long we had reached the status of a serious relationship. Sharing meals together, partaking in any local festivities or sites of interest together. I didn't care much about making new friends at the college to replace Mike and Nathan. Monica was the entire world I needed. About halfway through the year, however, I received a letter in the mail with the return address being my home address. It was a letter from Bradley. He updated me on recent events back home, which wasn't terribly much to speak of in reality. The main reason he wrote was simply because he missed me and wanted to stay in touch, a proposal to which I certainly agreed. I felt bad for the little guy, though. From what he described, Mom was really taking no prisoners with him. She became twice as strict now that I wasn't around to distract him from proper etiquette, as Mom had apparently put it. She never allowed any of his friends into the house, pushed his bedtime forward 2 hours earlier, and changed his diet to which every meal consisted of either oatmeal, spinach, or a combination of the two. It sounded dreadful. All the while, Bradley's pleas to Dad fell on deaf ears as our father remained stubborn and gave no objection to Mom's dictatorship, even if he never showed signs of agreeing with her methods. Bradley mentioned that Mom wasn't even allowing him to write the letter to me, forcing him to hide it in the mail. That had been the last straw. It aggravated me to watch as Mom completely ruined Bradley's life for no reason, and I was ready to take action. I replied to Bradley's letter and informed him that once the semester was over, I would come back for him and take him away to live with me in Lanston. I was now a legal adult, and being a blood relative, I had just as much jurisdiction over Bradley as our parents did. If they really wanted him back, which I highly doubted they would have to prove to me that they would treat him better. In the meantime, my apartment wasn't much, and I'd have to make other arrangements for Bradley once the school year started up again, since I wasn't going to just lock him in my small apartment all day with nothing to do. But he sounded desperate in his letter, and I knew he would be much happier as long as he was with me instead of them. Monica and I would come up with some way for him to live a better life than the terrible one he faced at home. Summer intercession was just around the corner when I received another letter of interest in the mail. I didn't recognize the return address on this one. I opened it up and was greeted by a beautifully crafted parchment. It was an invitation to a wedding. I didn't recognize the name and had to read through the contents of the letter several times before it finally clicked. Monica's brother was going to get married in a few days, and she had invited me to attend. It sounded like a nice change of pace. I had been growing restless of my cramped apartment and was ready for some time to unwind somewhere else, especially if it meant spending more time with Monica. I didn't tell my family about the wedding, though, especially not my mother. Knowing her, she would find any reason to try and convince me not to go. For some reason, she hated the idea of me doing anything fun. She never cared about Monica whenever I described her, so I knew Mom wouldn't understand why attending the wedding was so important to me. She tried to call earlier the morning I was leaving for the ceremony, but I let it go to voicemail, subconsciously sending her a message that I had better things to do than argue with her over the phone. I secretly told Bradley through a letter beforehand that I would come pick him up the day after the wedding. I don't think Mom had found out about the runaway plan, though. Bradley never made any indication in the letters that she knew of our plans or that she was even suspicious. I didn't know when I could get Bradley out of the house without our parents catching him, but I could only hope Bradley had packed up his things as I had requested and would be ready for departure at any time to allow us a seamless getaway. The wedding ceremony was beautifully crafted, and I enjoyed every minute of it. It had been the first wedding I ever attended when I thought about it. Monica introduced me to the groom during the party following the ceremony. He was a tall, well-mannered gentleman who took quite a liking to me for some reason I didn't fully understand. I don't really know if it was because I somehow managed to make a good enough first impression, or because Monica had talked so highly of me to him that there really wasn't any way for me not to become well acquainted with him. Monica and I had danced just as we did at prom night. We waltzed along in perfect harmony and let the gentle melodies of the orchestra cast us away from the world for hours. I had grown confident around Monica and wasn't so hesitant to get close to her. As one particular slow song began to play, Monica lifted her head from my shoulder and whispered into my ear that she and I were perfect together when we danced. She felt so safe in my arms. Monica went on to describe herself as Cinderella, having found her fated prince and sharing their final waltz. I was never a fan of the fairy tales Mom used to read to me as a child, mainly because I didn't believe it was possible for princesses to find their true love so easily. Maybe it was because I hadn't learned to understand love yet. But when I was around Monica, everything just felt easier. Everything just felt right. The drive home from the wedding had left me exhausted. I wanted nothing more than to curl up in my bed and sleep for the remaining hours of the night in preparation for the big day ahead of me. I opened the door to my apartment, turned on the kitchen light, and instantly focused on the red flashing light of the message machine on the table, indicating that I had a voicemail. Mom had called again, but 6 hours earlier when I wasn't home. I was about ready to tune her out, thinking this was just more of her usual nagging about how I never return her calls. But then I actually listened to the message itself. Mom was panicking. Her voice was choppy, and I could tell she was fighting back tears. She spoke so fast in the message as if she had a bomb strapped to her chest, and I couldn't make out what she was trying to tell me. I played the message back 2 more times before I finally pieced it together. Mom was demanding I come home immediately, but not for her sake. Something had happened to Bradley.